And our focus this afternoon is on the minimum tax debate, and my two hosts are still raring to go. We have Mr. Ombaka as well as Mr. Macharia. And before we went for the break, clearly a lot to be desired out of this minimum tax campaign. At the same time, Mr. Macharia, it would be unfair for us to also not forget to look at the economic fundamentals. We are seeing revenue collection has improved since the year began. According to the President's last State of the Nation address, he did give a very forward-looking picture in terms of the economic outlook, indicating that the economy will be growing at about 7%. And of course, this is one of the key pillars when it comes to ensuring that there is sustainable growth. So as players in the hospitality sector, as you call for more considerations when it comes to economic measures that you can be cushioned, are we asking more than too much?
Thank you, Abi. First of all, it's very good news that there are projections that the economy will grow at 7%. But this may be attributed to sectors other than the tourism sector. Because in tourism, we don't see any growth this coming year. You remember last year we went from projected 5% growth,
yes,
to deep in the negative. Mm-hmm. At the same time, we put out a deal with the unions and government, and we agreed to keep our people employed for the first 2 months of the pandemic at full salary, second 2 months at half salary, and the rest of the time at stipends, mm-hmm, for those who had not gone back to work. That is the situation to date. In order for us to do that, we had to borrow a lot of money. And you remember, government supported us by reducing the cash reserve ratio, sure, and the central bank rate, mm-hmm, freed about 34 billion, which we borrowed immediately, mm-hmm, and put that also out into supporting staff. So what we are saying is, even if we had some growth, yes, in the economy this year, it's not going to be realized in the tourism sector, because right now we still don't have overseas and international bookings. We only have local bookings, which usually account for about a third of the total revenue. So you can see we still have 2/3 of the revenue missing. So even if we did grow, we'd still not be able to recover our losses from last year.
But so, Mr. Macharia, indications show that with the arrival of the vaccine, yes, this has injected a dose of fresh hope for the sector.
There is hope in the sector. Uh-huh. In fact, the vaccine situation is quite encouraging. And we are trying to encourage government to push a rollout message so that people can, the uptake can be a bit more than what we are seeing now. In the source markets, let's take, for example, the UK. The UK has done a major rollout. I think they are on about 25 million first shot vaccines in people. But today or tomorrow, they're going to announce that international travel outside the UK is still not allowed. So what does that mean? It means that we lose out on the bookings that would have come to us in the British summer. The rest of Europe, Germany, France, Sweden, Denmark, were not too enthusiastic about the vaccine. Mm-hmm. So there's been a bit of a slowdown. Okay. So as we wait to sort all this out and also sort out our local situation, we don't see bookings really coming back till probably the third or fourth quarter of this year. Right. So there is hope, mm-hmm, and we are happy. But even as we cling on that hope, we also need support locally. And how do we get supported locally? We were calling for an extension of the stimulus package, particularly for the tourism industry, because it hasn't recovered. You may look at other sectors, and there are sectors that are doing well. I think the tea sector is doing quite well. Some parts of agriculture. Manufacturing will struggle because we are very much intertwined.
Correct.
So you'll find that if now you go and ask people to pay on revenues, I'll give you an example of what is happening.
Back to the minimum tax.
Back to the minimum tax.
Yes.
An example of what is happening. And another example of what has been said here. 25% of our revenues are attributed to the supply chain. So what we do is that if we are making 100 shillings, 25 shillings is distributed to the supplier of mboga, the supplier of Coca-Cola, the supplier of meat, the supplier of soap, electricity, and so on and so forth. So that's about 25%. Now, if I order for Coca-Cola from my local retailer, I'll report my revenue with the addition that I put. So if it's 25 shillings and I sell it at 30, my revenue is 30. So I'm paying tax on 30.
Yeah.
My retailer is paying tax on 25, on minimum. His distributor is paying tax on probably 20. Yeah, and the manufacturer is paying tax. So you're building this multiple layer of taxation, and you don't know when it will end. Now, if my burden is my value addition, which is 5 shillings, then what's the point of having VAT to begin with? So you have VAT and you have minimum tax, and it's double taxation. When you talk about the amendment to the Income Tax, the Income Tax Act itself says that you should not pay on losses. It's the same Income Tax Act, and it's the same Income Tax Act that you're using now to bring in a minimum. This is a simple strategy of deepening. You're deepening your tax base. So it means you're milking the same cow more instead of broadening your tax base. And that's where our bone of contention is.
What if the cow still has a lot of milk?
The cow has no milk. I've just said it. We are coming from an excess of 200 billion loss.
Yeah.
Even if we grew this year, would not recover that the lost revenue last year, considering that we still kept our people employed.
So are you suggesting that this is a violation of taxpayers' rights?
It is.
Oh, yes.
It is. It is an open violation because it's tax on tax. And I've told you, we have many other hidden taxes and levies that are usually pushed to this supposed person known as the employer who seems to have a bottomless pit of money, while other people that we know of don't pay tax at all. So once you're compliant and you're within the tax range of KRA, then the thing that has been happening over the last 10 or 15 years is that increase this, increase that, introduce this, introduce that. Let's get more money. Penalize them. They tell us that they've met their targets, but if you look at the amount of penalties and the kind of penalties that they impose on people, you can't meet your taxes on penalties. You've got to look at how you can encourage more business to come in. People are talking about folding up in our industry. What do you do with a 4 or 5 billion investment in the hotel industry? You can't just pick it up and drop it in Rwanda. But in other sectors, it's easy to move. So we have a lot of frustrated investors who are thinking, am I really in the right country?
And speaking about this, does this put our economy at risk of investors considering other markets? At the same time, how will this play out, especially now that you've already gone to court? And assuming the court's verdict is that the tax stays on, what other options are on the table?
You really can't fight with the government. But the court process, I think this is going to the Constitutional Court, and the lawyer will tell us. There is always an option to go to the Court of Appeal and probably to the Supreme Court. So there are still two other steps that you can take. But what will happen is that once you disenfranchise investors, they'll start looking for places. And you remember, most of the hotels here are owned by locals. Even when you see Marriott's or Radisson Blues or even Intercontinental and Hilton's, you will find that the owners, the real investors, are the local people. The management companies are external. So as Intercontinental, we might decide we are exiting.
Sure.
So we'll leave you, Abby, holding your hotel with no brand anymore, and then we decide we'll just move to Uganda or move to Ethiopia. So what that does is that it actually has a big impact on the destination confidence. So you find that most people will start thinking, why are brands leaving Kenya? Then there's a confidence issue. Then with that comes a reduction in numbers. A hotel like Intercontinental has a very big network, what is known as a 5 Continents Club, where they have millions and millions of members who are able to be directed to your country through that. It's an informal marketing tool. So we really need to think about growing the industry, growing the economy, not just what we can get out of it.
Interesting. We want to wrap up this discussion. Mr. Ombaka, what are the legal options?
The legal options, of course, the first and the best option was Parliament making the right decision and making a well-informed decision. And in close succession to that is Kenya Revenue Authority making sure that they have credible stakeholders. There's this thing we keep on calling public participation, stakeholder involvement, and I think we need to move from just it being placation, where you're calling a mass of people and people make noise and then you say we've heard and then you move on, to where we can be able to start checking the quality of our stakeholder participation. Because the data I'm giving you, you're seeing how easily I can be able to access it. And even from his industry, somebody can say, maybe I've sold a bottle of beer, I've made a profit of 28%. But that profit is only with the fingers crossed, because if that bottle breaks on the way back to the distributor, I'm starting at a loss. So there's a carried risk. And we cannot start penalizing risk as a country. You've asked a question, what happens if courts do not agree with what the Kenya Association of Manufacturers and Retailers are doing? I think we'll just become one of those countries where you have to learn by making mistakes. And the problem is, how many mistakes are you going to make anyway? Must you be that country? Like one time when people discovered uranium, they saw that it was making teeth white. So yeah, people in America were using uranium to, you unajipaka uranium, you put it on your teeth are shining. By the time they realized that, my God, this is dangerous. This is something that is radioactive. And they were being buried in lead caskets. It was too bad. So do you want to become that country where you're going to be burying your people in lead caskets because they just did not do the due diligence on the data that they are having to make right decisions? Maybe just as an end, I think it's chapter 6 of BBI. It talks about shared prosperity. And very interesting, the word tax appears 56 times in the BBI document. And I even wonder that I wish the people doing this thing on minimum tax would revise the notes in the BBI and realize that Kenyans are already complaining that tax in Kenya is not incentivizing, it is punitive. And finally, this is also a legal thing. Tax in any country works to the extent that people are willing to volunteer and work with the government. And therefore, if KRA is not going to build proper relationships with Kenyans, really relationships, then there is no way you're going to increase your tax revenue. So any other mechanism, holding a big gun, you can't shoot people, tax out of people. It's not possible.
Pay unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Many thanks.
And we are happy to do that.
Yes.
All right. Yeah,
thank you, gentlemen. We are out of time. We need to wrap up this discussion. Well, we've been having a very interesting discussion around the minimum tax debate. Of course, we shall continue with this particular discussion in the coming days as we hope to see whether the government will budge or not. All right, that's this discussion we had with Mr. Vincent Ombaka as well as Mr. Mark Macharia, just unpacking the tax debate in the country. Well, it is at this point where we want to wrap it up, and do hope to see you tomorrow, same time, same place. My name is Abi Agina. Keep safe.